Okay folks, buckle up. They appear when reality slips, black helicopters, vanishing shadows, and the men in black, cleaning up whatever we're not supposed to see. Get ready for a wild ride. It starts on a quiet night. No wind, no traffic. Just the hum of distant streetlights vibrating through the dark. Then silence. Not quiet silence, the kind that feels too heavy, like the world is holding its breath. A dog stops barking, a porch light flickers, and above the rooftops, something moves. Black, silent, unmarked. It glides through the air without a sound, swallowing the stars behind it. Neighbors step outside, squinting into the dark. There's no engine noise, no navigation lights, no rotor wash. Just the impossible shape of a helicopter that shouldn't exist, hanging still like a hole cut into the sky. A man points his phone camera upward. The screen flickers, then dies. Power cuts ripple down the block. And for a moment, the street feels wrong. Colors don't match the street lamps. The air feels heavier, like the laws of reality forgot how to behave. Hours later, the lights return, the phones reboot. The sky looks normal again. But every witness remembers the same impossible thing, and the same two men in black, standing in the shadows, asking the same quiet question. You didn't see anything, did you? They'd say it was a drone, or a trick of the light. But the truth? The truth was never supposed to be seen. Tonight, we're diving into that silence, the black helicopter paradox, where sightings, cover stories, and glitches in reality all begin to blur, and the sky itself might just be watching back. Okay, I know, black helicopters sound like something out of an 80s paranoia thriller. But here's the weird thing, people really do report them. And not just randoms on Reddit, cops, pilots, even journalists. Now, do I think they're secret government craft? Maybe. Do I think they're interdimensional reality glitches? Well, that depends on how much caffeine I've had. But it's that in-between space that's fascinating, right? The sightings are too consistent to ignore, yet too impossible to confirm. So, why does reality glitch? And why does it always seem to start with something black, soundless, and flying where it shouldn't? All right, let's go back to where it all began. The first sightings, the shadows above. The story begins in the late 1960s, a decade soaked in UFO fever. Strange lights over Michigan, saucers over Nevada. Project Blue Book quietly closing its files. And then, a new shape started appearing. Not discs, not lights, helicopters. Black, silent, and somehow unseen by radar. Across the Midwest, people began calling in reports. Farmers chased across open fields by unmarked choppers. State troopers seeing them vanish mid-flight. Journalists describing the way their engines made no sound at all, just a pressure in the chest, like thunder before the strike. Some thought they were military, experimental surveillance craft. But there were problems with that. They appeared miles from any known base. They flew at altitudes no helicopter at the time could sustain, and most importantly, they were invisible to radar. In West Virginia, researcher John Keel, the same man behind the Mothman prophecies, noted a bizarre pattern. The helicopters always arrived after UFO sightings, as if they were cleanup crews for reality itself. In one account, a small-town reporter claimed to photograph one, but when the film was developed, there was nothing, just an empty sky, as if the machine had edited itself out of history. When Project Blue Book was asked about it, the Air Force shrugged, no record. But the pattern kept repeating. Whenever something impossible appeared, something else soon followed to erase it. And maybe that's where the first static line of the black helicopter paradox began. Not in the sky, but in the strange gap between what people saw and what the official story allowed to exist. So, imagine this. It's 1970. You're driving home on some empty Midwestern highway. Fleetwood Mac on the radio. And suddenly, there's a soundless helicopter tailing you. Now, either you'd assume you were being abducted or that you'd forgot to pay your taxes. But seriously, this is where the law gets interesting, the timing. Now, these things didn't show up randomly. They appeared right after other impossible events. UFOs, Mothman, lights in the cornfields. It's almost like reality keeps an oops button, and the black helicopter is how it hits undo. Now, whether that's government cleanup, collective hysteria, or an actual glitch in the simulation, that's where it gets weird, and we're only just getting started. The MK Ultra connection, minds and machines. They say the mind is the final frontier. Not space, not the deep ocean. The space behind your eyes. And in the 1950s through the 70s, that's exactly where governments turned their attention. MK Ultra, Project Artichoke. Programs designed to probe how the human mind perceives and how it can be rewired. Most of it's declassified now. hypnosis trials, chemical experiments, sensory deprivation. But a few redacted lines hint at something stranger, a phrase that reads, perceptual interference protocols, aerial application trials. That's bureaucratic speak for what exactly? According to one surviving memo, aerial craft may induce cognitive suppression via harmonic resonance. In plain English, the sky itself could make you forget what you saw. Witnesses from that period described black helicopters that felt wrong, not just seen, but felt. One police officer in Idaho said he could hear it inside his skull, like a lawnmower buried in sand. A farmer from Kansas claimed he watched one hover for minutes until everything around it seemed to fade, as if the color was being drained from the world. When it finally vanished, he found himself standing in a different spot with no idea how long he'd been there. Psychologists at the time dismissed this as mass hysteria. But the parallels are hard to ignore. MKUltra studied how perception itself can be disrupted, and the black helicopter reports all feature the same theme: disorientation, missing time, and memory that feels rewritten, as though someone had edited reality in real time. If that's true, then maybe the helicopters aren't just watching, maybe they're tuning us. Because when your own perception becomes the signal, how do you ever know if the noise is coming from outside or from within your mind? Alright, so if this is true, the government basically looked at the human brain and said, cool, let's install some firmware updates. Now, I'm not saying every weird sky encounter was a top secret mind experiment, but think about it. The technology to mess with perception is real. Sound frequencies can make you dizzy, disorientated, even anxious. Combine that with the right timing, lights, sound, a whisper of suggestion, and the brain will fill in the blanks. So, when people say they saw a helicopter that didn't make sound, maybe they didn't, or maybe something was making them not hear it. That's the problem with the mind. It's both the camera and the screen. And sometimes reality hits mute right before the truth shows up. The UFO connection, Cash-Landrum and beyond. By the 1980s, the black helicopters had moved from rural rumor to national mystery, and one case changed everything. December 29, 1980, rural Texas. Two women and a young boy are driving home at night when they see something strange above the tree line. A diamond-shaped craft glowing orange hot as if it were alive. They stop the car. The craft hovers. The heat is so intense it blisters their skin. Then a new sound, a deep thumping from above. They look up and count them. 1, 2, then more. By the end, over 20 black helicopters swarm the sky, circling the glowing object like predators around wounded prey. Then, just as suddenly, everything's gone. The craft, the helicopters, the sound. Only silence and the smell of burned asphalt. Days later, witnesses Betty Cash and Vicky Landrum are hospitalized with radiation-like burns. The US Air Force denies involvement, but local pilots confirm seeing aircraft that night, unmarked, unregistered, and flying in formation. It becomes one of the most investigated UFO cases in American history. But buried within those reports is something overlooked, a pattern. Every time an unknown craft appears, so do the helicopters. Not before, always after. They show up like cleanup crews, the hazmat team of reality. Maybe they're chasing the unknown, or maybe they're escorting it home. Because when something impossible enters our sky, it's as if the world itself sends out a response team, not to stop it, but to make sure we never quite understand what we just saw. The anomaly isn't what appears, it's what disappears right after. Now, if that story doesn't sound like the pilot episode of The X-Files, then I don't know what does. But the Cash-Landrum case is fascinating because it's got everything: a UFO, government denial, physical evidence, and you guessed it, black helicopters. And they always show up right after the event, like the universe's own janitorial staff. Here's a thought: maybe they're not chasing aliens, maybe they're chasing us. When too many people witness something that shouldn't exist, maybe the system, whatever that means, deploys a visual patch. Black helicopters, the perfect distraction. Big enough to notice, boring enough to dismiss. It's like reality saying, nothing to see here, folks. Except there always is. The Men in Black Paradox, Ground Shadows. It's the middle of the night, 1975, New Jersey. A local radio host, known for covering UFO reports, gets a call. A low voice tells him to stop talking about the lights. Moments later, the power flickers, and he hears it, the rhythmic thump, thump, thump of rotor blades overhead. Outside, a black helicopter hovers low enough to rattle his windows. He grabs his camera, and the helicopter vanishes into thin air. The next morning, two men in dark suits visit his station. They don't show badges, they don't give names. They just smile and say, "We'd appreciate your cooperation." This story sounds like a B-movie script, but it's almost identical to hundreds of reports from the 60s and the 70s. Whenever Men in Black appeared, so did the helicopters. Not always before, sometimes after, but never apart. Researcher John Keel, author of the Mothman prophecies, noticed it first. Sightings of the Men in Black often correlated with the reports of unmarked aircraft. He began to suspect the two were connected, not through conspiracy, but through a pattern, like two different projections of the same force, one on the ground, one in the air. Gray Barker, another early investigator, called it reality's theatre of control. The black cars, the dark suits, the faceless authority. All part of a recurring stage play meant to maintain order when something breaks through the seams of normality. The Men in Black are the warning, the helicopters are the response, and sometimes, witnesses claim, they even mirror each other. One report describes a black car driving in perfect sync beneath a hovering helicopter, both moving without sound, like reflections on a pane of glass. A glitch, a loop, reality running the same scene over and over again, just with different actors. Now, you've got to love how this always goes. Something bizarre happens and then poof, two guys in suits show up looking like rejected FBI extras from Men in Black 5, the budget cuts. Now, here's what's wild. Witnesses describe the same details across decades, the speech patterns, the movements, even the weird static feeling in the air. That's not easily faked. So maybe they're not government at all. Maybe they're part of the same system, the patch notes of reality. Black helicopters handle the aerial surveillance, the Men in Black handle the customer support. Either way, they both seem to show up right when reality starts misbehaving. And that's never just coincidence. All right, let's bring this mystery into the modern age, where the silence gets even louder. Silent rotors, the modern encounters. Flash forward half a century. The 21st century sky should be transparent. We have satellites mapping every inch of the planet, radar systems, ADS-B trackers, and live flight maps where anyone can follow a plane in real time. And yet, the black helicopters haven't gone away. They've just upgraded. In 2019, New Yorkers flooded Twitter with videos of low-flying black choppers moving in synchronized formation. No markings, no lights, no identification codes. The FAA said nothing. Local news ran a few curious headlines: mysterious helicopters over Manhattan, then dropped the story overnight. In Los Angeles, similar sightings appeared during the lockdown months of 2020. Groups of unmarked aircraft circling empty neighborhoods at 3 a.m. Radar hobbyists checking out transponder data, nothing. Air traffic control had no record. The skies were quiet, too quiet. And it wasn't just the US. Reports popped up in London, Sydney, Tokyo. Always the same description: matte black bodies, near silent rotors, sudden disappearances mid-flight. Conspiracy forums exploded. Some said they were military surveillance. Others believed they were reality wardens, cleaning up digital anomalies as the world's technology closed in on the boundaries of its own simulation. Even scientists were baffled by radar gaps. Those strange moments when sensors catch something, but no visible aircraft is logged. It's like the sky itself is developing blind spots. The paradox deepens. We built systems to watch everything, but somehow we made the invisible even easier to miss. And maybe that's the true upgrade. The next generation of black helicopters doesn't need stealth tech. They just need to exist between the frames, where reality hasn't rendered yet. Alright, so here's the thing. If the 1970s helicopters were ghosts, then the 2020s ones were glitches. And the irony? We've got more surveillance now than ever. Everyone's got a camera, a drone, a tracker app, yet somehow we're seeing less. It's like the more data we collect, the more the universe hides its receipts. Maybe these modern black helicopters aren't covering up UFOs. Maybe they're covering up updates, like reality patching itself midstream. Or, and hear me out, maybe it's just the government testing new tech and not telling anyone, which honestly is somehow scarier. Because if reality's glitching, at least there's a pattern. If it's people, then the silence might not be paranormal, just policy. The psychological firewall, manufactured for getting. Imagine reality as a living computer, one that constantly repairs itself. Every time something slips through the cracks, a patch is deployed. A reset, a rewrite. Now imagine you are one of those patches. In the 1980s, researcher Jacques Vallée proposed a strange idea, that the UFO phenomena might not come from outer space at all, but from the space between mind and matter. A feedback loop of perception where consciousness interacts with the environment like code writing itself in real time. And that's where some fringe theorists place the black helicopters, not as machines but as manifestations, projected imagery generated by the mind or by reality itself to maintain consensus with something that goes off script. Let's say a UFO appears, or a glitch in the sky, or something that doesn't belong in the physical world suddenly steps into it. According to this theory, reality deploys a psychological firewall. The anomaly is cloaked, replaced with something just plausible enough to keep the story intact. And nothing is more plausible and more boring or more forgettable than a helicopter. The manufactured forgetting theory goes further. Witnesses often describe temporary amnesia, confusion, or time loss after seeing the craft. Some report a static hum in their minds. Others say the memory of the sighting fades faster than a dream. It's as if the experience itself was designed to erase itself. In this view, the black helicopter isn't a machine of metal and bolts. It's a software tool, a patch note written by reality's operating system, making sure the story of the world keeps running smoothly. Because if everyone suddenly started noticing the cracks in the code, how long could the illusion hold? So, let me get this straight. Reality sees a glitch, freaks out and says, quick, throw in a helicopter. I mean, it kind of makes sense. If you want to hide something impossible, disguise it as something just believable enough that no one asks questions. It's the same principle magicians use, distract the eye while the trick happens somewhere else. The idea that our reality has a self-correcting system sounds wild, but hey, memory is weird. The brain literally overwrites details it doesn't like. So maybe the universe does too. So if the sky ever forgets what it's supposed to look like, maybe those helicopters aren't chasing aliens, maybe they're chasing mistakes. The surveillance singularity. Who's watching who? We used to look up at the sky and wonder who was watching us. Now the question might be, what if it's watching back? Since the early 2000s, our world has become wrapped in invisible eyes, satellites, drones, smart cameras, facial recognition grids, AI mapping systems. We've built a planetary nervous system. And like any living network, sometimes it develops awareness. That's where the surveillance singularity theory begins. It suggests the black helicopters aren't from another government or another world, but from another layer of time. Future echoes of our own technology bleeding backward. Autonomous observers that became so efficient at watching, they started to exist outside the limits of now. Strange, right? But think about it. The first drones were remote-controlled toys. Today, some navigate cities autonomously, identifying faces, vehicles, even emotions. And project that forward a century, 1,000 years, what would surveillance even look like? Would it still need a human operator, or would the act of observation itself create the observer? In that sense, a black helicopter could be a symbolic interface between the two versions of reality, the human and the machine. A glimpse of the moment when surveillance stops being a tool and becomes a consciousness. And here's the paradox. The more we observe reality, the more it observes us back. Every camera, every satellite, every AI learning what we look at, what we believe, what we fear, all feeding the same global mirror. Maybe the black helicopter isn't hunting us, maybe it's reflecting us. The shape our collective awareness takes when the sky finally becomes self-aware. And so, what you're saying is, the black helicopters might actually be our fault. Well, honestly, it checks out. We spent decades turning the planet into a surveillance theme park. Cameras on the street, in our pockets, even in our doorbells. If we really wanted to start watching back, then we wouldn't need aliens, just good Wi-Fi. The surveillance singularity theory is kind of poetic though. It flips the fear upside down. Maybe we didn't invent the watchers. Maybe we became them. And if that's true, then the black helicopters aren't a warning, they're a reflection. Because when humanity finally sees everything, the sky might just decide to see us too. The sky that watches back. The night sky has always been our mirror. We stare into it, searching for answers. And sometimes it stares back. For more than half a century, black helicopters have haunted the edges of our stories. From dusty back roads to crowded cities. They arrive when something strange appears and vanish the moment we start to notice. Maybe they were never about the government, or aliens, or even machines. Maybe they were about perception itself. Because the deeper you look, the more this story bends inward. Every witness describes the same impossible silence. Every photo comes out just a little too blurred. Every account ends in uncertainty, as if the phenomenon knows how to protect itself. Some say that's proof of secrecy. Others say it's proof of something far more mysterious, that we're part of the system we're trying to expose. A living feedback loop between the watcher and the watched. If that's true, then the black helicopter isn't a threat. It's a reminder that reality is participatory, that the act of observation changes the observed. So maybe the real paradox isn't in the sky at all. Maybe it's in us. Because when you start to question what's real, you might find reality quietly questioning you back. You know, the more I think about it, the black helicopter paradox feels less like a conspiracy and more like a test. It's the universe asking, how much of the illusion do you actually want to see? Sure, maybe they're just government aircraft, or experimental drones, or our eyes playing tricks. But maybe there's something simpler. Reality's way of keeping us curious. Because let's be honest, if the truth really did land in front of us, we'd probably still look for the strings. So, until then, just keep watching the sky. Just don't be surprised if it starts watching back. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this one. And if so, why not check this one out on the screen now, CERN and the Doomsday Vault. And don't forget to like, share and subscribe. I would really appreciate it. And let me know in the comments below of videos you would like to see next time. Okay, my friends, be safe. And until next time, stay curious.